Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Hear Our Voices. This is your host, Kay Did. And this is, as I said before, the Hear Our Voices podcast, where we tell stories, give resources, and change the narrative of homelessness. We do this podcast for anybody in the USA. They share their stories. We're asking you down below, say downstairs, down below will be the link for our link tree, and it'll be to different websites that we have, like our Instagram, our TikTok, our YouTube page. We try to update probably Instagram the most, honestly. And if you have any questions or any concerns, or especially if you live in New York City, if you want to know about resources and things like that, we have a resource packet down below. But also, if it's things you can't find, or need to know about food pantries and things like that, you can definitely DM us on any of the platforms. And our guest today is named Stephanie. And Stephanie, can you tell us a little bit about your journey thus far in life?
Hi, that was such an amazing intro.
Thank you.
You are amazing. My name is Stephanie. I am a single mom from Brooklyn. I have three children. Um, Three little chickies, I call them. It's ridiculous, but I call them chickies. And they're 8, 10, and 12.
Mm,
Yeah, they're the reason why I fight so hard, the reason why I keep going. Um, I
okay.
guess what's lead me here to answer your question, I've been through a lot in the short 30 some odd years of life. But everything is a learning experience and it prepares me better for the next stages in my life, you know? Um, yeah.
So I have a question. Where do you say you live in Brooklyn? Do you live in an apartment? Do you rent? Do you own a home? I'm not sure really what your situation is. Where do you live right now?
Well, I was in Brooklyn, but due to I'm a domestic violence survivor, and so I was able to move um, within the tri-state area.
Got it. Got you.
And yeah, so it's a recent move. We're almost a year here, and it's the best blessing because even so, a little bit about the DV. It's just even with um having a home and being in an apartment. Um, that apartment, it harbors trauma.
Right.
So for me, I just feel like like there was a point where I just didn't see it as a home. Yes, it was a roof over my head, but the stress and the financial strain and manipulation in some parts um, from my abuser made it very difficult for me. And I also realized my kids to see that as home.
Right.
So it's been a long journey in trying to move out and to create a better space for not only me, but also my children. So I'm so blessed and grateful to be here.
Okay. So, guys, as you know, I never know when a person is going to come onto this podcast and listen to this part, or if they listen to like the first episode, or if the other five, and this is like the sixth one they're watching. So, I just want to explain what domestic violence is about and certain ways it can be formed in. I think the most popular one, which I think is not, I think is the most popular one, is people think of hitting, right? And yes, that's domestic violence. But they have other things that people can use as domestic violence. And most people think of also intimate partner, like, a couple, but it could also happen with, I want to say parents and their children,
Yeah.
especially after the age of 18. I feel like that's mostly recurrent in my mind, to be honest. I'm not saying that little people under 18 don't get it, but I feel like, that's what usually I
If
get
over 18,
targets.
you kind of see it. It's
Yeah,
different.
for sure. And it can happen in honestly all ages. You could have teen violence. People don't think about teenagers having domestic violence issues, but it's a high thing. And then because they're so young, they don't understand exactly what's happening or is this allowed, is this not allowed, because they're developing minds. And some adults, honestly, they're in their 20s and 30s and still don't get it. So imagine a teenager was going through all these things, going through those things, right? So they have other things, like they have people doing, they could do stuff on the cyber, like, internet, things like that. They can be, well, pinching is like a form of, like, putting your hands on somebody, but spitting, name calling, people think it's not
Ooh,
cool to be
that
calling
one.
people names out their name. It's not like you call them sweetie, but you call them something negative. People internalize that and they can make their life even worse because you're calling them that, but they're taking it in like it's even truth. And majority of the time, it's not even true what they're saying. They're just doing something to hurt you. And a lot of times, a lot of abusers are people who've seen this growing up, and then they think it's okay to do, and they need help themselves. But we got to think about right now the survivor, what we're doing this topic on. So
And the only way that you can actually, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the only
no
way to
problem.
actually, like, as an abuser, like, for me, if you're not seeking help, if you don't feel like the things that you have done or the things that you've caused needs repair, why do you feel the need to repair yourself? Like, why do you feel like you need to improve any part of yourself?
Right,
So it's so important to not, I think domestic violence overall is not talked about enough and
right,
enough spaces and in the places that it needs to be spoken about. I feel like children should know and actually understand what domestic violence is and how it looks like and how it can be perceived. My children, they are varying ages, and I am very not hard on them, but I'm very informative when it comes to what domestic violence is and how it looks like and what's the different forms of domestic violence, just so they are aware. Because I was a quote unquote, according to New York State, I was an adult and I was abused, and I was in such denial of my abuse. It really hindered me getting help sooner. It really hindered because as you said, most people hear domestic violence, they think, oh, he hit you. Oh, they put, or she hit you, or they put their hands on you. But it's so much more. The financial abuse,
right,
that part is the hardest for me. It was subtle changes that where a person is pushing upon your boundaries. Um, I was in my in the home in Brooklyn, in my apartment in Brooklyn, and I realized how much coercive control. My friend says that a lot, but it's true. It's that those little things that add up. So it's as if you're building a sandcastle and you feel like you're going nowhere. But as you continue to put little by little by little, it starts to grow higher and taller, and it's not so easily blown by the wind or a shove. You really have to do a lot to get it out, to deform, to make it, not aesthetically pleasing. It's kind of like domestic violence, at least for me. I don't know. For me, I felt it was the small things. It was and then you mix that with culture. Oh yeah, I don't. Oh, you want me to stay home? Okay, that's fine. I don't mind doing that.
right,
But then it became okay. Why is why is the rent not paid on time? Why is it the credit cards under your name are paid? Why is this apartment that we live in under your name solely and not our name, even though we both came in together? It's those things. And you only know what you know when you know it. But through eviction, I faced eviction, did the whole eviction process. Um, Even after my abuser was no longer living with me and my children. And it was insane. The management refused to, I mean, absolutely refuse to put my name on the lease, even though he was in full knowledge that my abuser was no longer residing there. And he and the horrible thing about it is that unfortunately not everyone is of good character or good morals. So you
Right.
can't rely on that okay, they're just going to do the right thing. Um a couple of court cases later, a couple of uh so many things. 311 reports and just trying to get a standard of living, you know, holes in the walls repaired because it's an old building, just general maintenance of said apartment. I lived there for 10 years of my life,
Mm.
10 solid years of my life. I had two of my children in that, two of the three. I have three children total. I have two of my children in that home. And it got to a point where all I could see was the abuse. Like, if the walls could talk, that's what I would tell people. If the walls could talk, they would have a book to write. They would have so much to say. I was home in a home, but it wasn't my home.
Right.
And there was multiple layers to preventing me to have my name on that lease to make it my home. It was multiple ACS cases, multiple ACS cases that were filed and founded against that other parent.
Right.
So domestic violence looks different. It's not a one size fit all. It's not a glove you could put in and but the one common thing that I am going to acknowledge is that sometimes you can be facing the verbal abuse where people are speaking to you outside your name, calling you the B word, calling you the N word, calling you everything under the sun. You could have children with them, or you could just be with them. And it's those little things you don't know until you go through it. And even when you go through it, you could never really sit in someone else's shoes. So I felt unhoused. I felt like hidden homeless, where you're in somebody's home and you're like stacked up and but not technically homeless. Right? It wasn't a safe place for me and my children. It got to a point where safety I had to do some safety planning just to feel safe in my own home.
Can you
So,
explain what safety planning is for whoever who's listening at this moment?
yeah, safety planning is when you take the time and, depending on how abuse looks to you, just doing things to make you safe, to have eventually the idea is that you want to leave your abuser. You don't want to continue to suffer with what's going on. But depending on how long or how you feel or how they made you feel, there's levels where you're like, okay, well, this person is going to kill me if I, this person is really going to physically hurt me if I do X, Y, and Z. So safety planning is first, how do you stay safe? Do you have a list or because I had kids, I had to count them in my safety planning. If it was just me alone, it would be okay, who can I call when there's really something going on? Who can I text? Do you have a top five people who, when you call, or if you text a certain, like a code word or an acronym, they know that that means that you need help ASAP and that they should call 911 so 911 could come and assist you. in whatever it is. Um, that's one part. A next part for me was to I had this, it was a device, I forgot the name of it, where you can have it in your home, and it's like you just push a button. You don't have to say anything. You just push a button. They also have like a thing that is like a watch, and it's connected through your Wi-Fi. And the way that it works is that when you push it, you you don't have to say anything. But the moment that you don't say anything, the first thing the responder is going to do is to listen to your background to see what's going on. Is it just kids playing, or is what's going on? Then they're going to call you on your phone. I believe it's twice. And if you do not answer, then police will be on their way. It could be once, but I believe it's twice. Um, and that's a way to stay safe. That's a way for to be relieved to know that, okay, if this person really is trying to hurt me, I can just excuse myself to the bathroom and push a button. I can just, you know, touch my watch, and then it'll talk to the machine, and then I will be safe, or someone is coming to help.
Right.
Because sometimes it's hard. It's hard to even call, because you're like, okay, well, I don't want to get this person in trouble. I don't want this person to feel a kind of way, or to put them in jail. But it's it's not about getting anyone in trouble. It's about staying safe. And if this person is of sane mind and continues to do things that you have said does not make you feel safe, or have explained that this is not okay, and they continue to do it, that's when you are just giving yourself outs, ways to stay safe. I used to tell my children, um, like I would give them code words. So if we were walking to school, or if I was taking them to daycare, and they, because there was times where I had order protection against um, that other parent,
Right.
and I would just let them know, like, if you see them, you're not supposed to see them. Let me know. And I am a big, I'm very big on making sure that they are not scared,
Right.
because unfortunately the court system is not for survivors. That is the biggest understatement. But it really, even now, I am fighting for some continuity
Right.
of care, to say that this is the third founded case against the same person for the same set of kids, that it warrants an adequate step down, whether that's supervised visitations, whether that's therapeutic supervised visitations, whether that is even after all of that is done, it's still, I still, I'm always safety planning. For me, it's just a way to make sure that um, my children understand boundaries to the highest degree possible for their age group, but also that they understand that it's okay to not want to do to how would I say that, to assert themselves and to advocate for what it is that they want, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So,
uh,
in your experience when you was going through this whole thing, how did you know? Did you? Because it's, I would assume that you didn't see the problems happening right away.
no,
You,
no,
it took a time. But when did you realize it was happening to you? And then when did you think back to say, "Oh, this is when it started"?
Um, I think my children, to be honest, when I
Mm,
first realized um, there was an incident that happened in my home that was in Brooklyn, and it involved my daughter. Um, After that incident occurred, I I told the father to not reside in this residence any further, and I am lucky. I am lucky to say the least. But don't get me wrong, that the DV continued to happen and continued to occur, and I
right,
was in such denial. It took until the first ACS case, which again involved my daughter, and she was hurt. And it, it wasn't until I went to Safe Horizons.
mm,
Safe Horizons is an organization that helps with trauma therapy for kids. They also work with the police officers.
right,
So, so little old me, instead of taking the kids to school, um, I packed them up. I didn't know if I was gonna. That's something I wish I had more knowledge on, whether my kids were going to be taken or not, whether how long we were going to be there or anything. When I
right,
called to report what happened, um, two things happened. One, I realized how, and I love my police officers, so don't get me wrong,
right,
but I realized how much it's all about perspective, right?
right,
So the police officers that came in, I'm so glad it was two of them, but they were not keen nor excited to continue to do their job, which is at their time is to assess the safety level of everyone in the house, as well as um, write the report of what they see.
right.
Right? I'm of Haitian descent, so I'm a black and brown girly, and my children are beautiful biracial children. They are the other parent Puerto Rican Irish. So black, Puerto Rican, and Irish little cheekies.
Right,
And so when people, especially when they were younger, they were fair skin. So I only say that just to say there were so many things going on at one time that was hard for me to really pinpoint and say, okay, this is what it is, right?
right,
And so for me, I felt the things that I know now, I wish I knew then. It didn't, it took until I walked into Safe Horizon. Well, I didn't walk. The police escorted us. And as a mom, my job is to always make my kids feel safe. They didn't even realize the magnitude of what we're doing.
right,
Because that's my job. My job is to make them say, "Oh yeah, we're just checking out what happened," and people are gonna ask questions, and that's it. And I packed their bag as if I was not gonna see them again because I didn't know. The police was not clear um, as to what was gonna happen. I was not clear as to what was gonna happen. All I knew was that they wanted the kids to go to this agency and speak about what happened because there were visible marks. That
mm,
was the scariest time in my life because I didn't know if my kids were going to come home or not. I packed their stuffies. I packed snacks because I didn't know if the place had snacks. They do, but they do, but I didn't know. So I had their book bag full of snacks. I packed one like a pair of clothing and a nightie for all of them,
right,
just in case, because they didn't tell me anything. When I got there, I got more clarity. Um, and there was a social worker that worked there. It was a guy, and he was older, maybe mid 40s, and he changed my life in one conversation. He changed my life. It's like not being seen, and finally someone sees you and
Mm,
puts a word to what you've been feeling, because up to that point I felt like, okay, well, maybe I'm just over exaggerating. Maybe I'm just too sensitive. Maybe I'm too this, maybe I'm too that. But for someone to validate your experience and say, hey, this is sounding a lot like domestic violence. And I was like, at that point, he, um, I can't even say that. I was like, at that point, he didn't physically hit me, but he didn't physically hit me. But um, when you force yourself upon another person in a sexual context,
right.
that's, you know, and I was in denial. I was in such denial. I just broke down and cried. Right then in the middle of this, just crying to this Caucasian man,
Oh man.
40 something year old man with his grays coming in and just really crying because that was the first time I was able to breathe,
Right.
right? And take a breath and say, okay, so I'm not crazy. And they directed me to oof, Help Roads. And Help Roads was at Brooklyn Family Justice Center. Help Roads is an organization that works with domestic violence survivors and their families. There's a wonderful, I'm always going to say her name, Miss Juanita Reed. She changed my life. She changed my life. So that white man and then Miss Juanita Reed. Because it was a group that was held in Brooklyn Family Justice Center.
Hmm.
And I was just so shy and like almost embarrassed, I guess,
Right.
because I didn't know how that would look like, right? And just learning the different types of abuse that made me look back and said, wow, I was abused for quite some time.
Right.
And just looking back and just thinking, just saying, well, this is a red flag. This is a red flag. And things that you don't think is let me get specific for just in case for those listeners that don't um red flag is just it's a term to say this is well you should know the gist is to say this is a warning, stay away, right?
Right.
um but in the case of DV it's like, hey, this is one of the traits of someone who is trying or consciously or unconsciously um, trying to gain control or power over you. The first time I experienced PV was in my youth, but
Wow.
I didn't know what that was. I didn't know how to say it or speak it. But when it comes to my children and their father, and the first time was when I was living with my mom when I was pregnant with my daughter,
Hmm.
and I had my daughter in my mom's house. We made space for her. When we moved out, maybe like the first month of all the bills coming in, and you're seeing all the bills and things of that nature. That's when I knew this was that it was not okay. Like he was that was the beginning, arguing over bills, because everyone has arguments. I think all relationships, all healthy relationships, can have arguments or disagreements. It's
Right.
how they are conducted. Do you feel scared at the end of the argument or discussion? Do you feel like that person's gonna pick up something and hit you? Do you feel like are they destroying your home or things around you in your home and then belittling your experience and how or and your feelings and how that made you feel? I was in denial for so long. And
Hey guys, this is the host K Did. This is Hear Our Voices, where we tell stories, give resources, and change the narrative of homelessness. If you want to follow us, you can follow us on all our social media platforms. And also, if you want to tell a story, you can definitely DM us anytime. I'm always available. To be honest, I'm always available to do interviews too. And we would love to hear your story. We would also like to have your resource added to our resource packet. Our resource packet is definitely linked in a LinkedIn every single episode to make sure if you need resources, if you need help, if you think of anything that you know you can give somebody else, that would be a place to do it. I hope these episodes are helpful to anybody that you know or to yourself. And we thank you so much for supporting us. Sit back and relax and listen to our next podcast. Bye.